If you have the skill and ability, you can shoot a wedding with almost any camera gear. However, having faster, more reliable, and better quality equipment will make your life as a wedding photographer easier and more efficient. This video shows what is the most popular wedding photography cameras in 2021. So without any further ado, let's start. Starting our list with Sony a7 III. As the newest camera on this list, it stands to reason that the Sony a7 III should be packed with the latest and greatest technology on offer to wedding photographers in 2021. However, one pleasant surprise that has caused more photographers to jump ship to Sony than ever before is the incredibly attractive price of this little mirrorless marvel. For a little over $2,000, Sony has created a camera that takes the best features from each of its other more expensive flagship bodies, Sony a7R III and Sony a9, whilst improving on them in several ways. I use a Sony a7R III for wedding photography, but dislike the huge 42.4 megapixels files, which tend to slow down my editing workflow. The Sony a7 III, on the other hand, offers a more manageable 24.2 megapixels, whilst also offering the same incredible AF performance of the Sony a9, but for half the price. The whole Sony full-frame mirrorless camera lineup is pretty confusing, with similar looking bodies and features that overlap each other. All you need to know is this: the Sony a7 III offers by far the best bang for the buck for wedding photographers. It makes full use of all the advantages of mirrorless cameras over DSLRs and offers more than any other camera on the market today. Whilst the other Sony full-frame mirrorless cameras are also some of the best cameras for wedding photography, it's the Sony a7 III that will appeal to the masses. The only issue will be getting your hands on one. Being able to place your autofocus point over 93% of the image area means obscure compositions are made much easier without having to rely on the focus recompose technique. 693 phase and 425 contrast AF points combined with 10 FPS and Sony's mind-blowing IAF means you'll never miss focus again. Then there's the incredible high ISO performance, 5-axis in-body image stabilization, long-lasting battery, 4K2 video, touch tilting LCD screen and other class-leading functions that make this the best wedding photography camera available today. Switching camera systems has always been hard, due in most part to the massive capital outlay required to make the jump. However, with the Sony a7 III and a selection of affordable Sony E-mount lenses, 2021 looks to be another year that Sony dominates the mirrorless wedding photography gear industry. At number 2, it's Nikon D850. Nikon had a tough year in 2017, with redundancies and fears of going under. Nikon needed to release a camera that would keep Nikon shooters happy and cause Canon shooters to look differently at their 5D. This all came with the release of the Nikon D850. The Nikon D850 is the ultimate DSLR for wedding photographers. It may also be the last pro body camera Nikon releases to the DSLR market if the latest mirrorless rumors are to be believed. Let's get one thing straight: the Nikon D850 is not cheap. However, if you make a living shooting wedding and want the best of the best, the asking price of this incredible camera is more than justifiable. So what are you getting for your money? First off, you can take advantage of medium format like 45.7 MP when you want to preserve every little detail of your wedding portraits. You're also able to shoot smaller RAW files to preserve the memory, something I wish Sony would implement. Then there's a BSI sensor, which offers an ISO range of 64 to 102,400, with files being shot at 12,800, still be more than acceptable for client delivery. ISO 64 is a first for a Nikon DSLR and means that you're able to shoot with faster lenses, larger apertures, and brighter daylight. Wedding photographers rely on class-leading autofocus, and thankfully Nikon shooters needn't shell out the big bucks for the flagship bodies anymore. The Nikon D850 uses the same ultra-accurate AF system as the Nikon D5, with 153 focus points, 99 cross-type sensors, and a dedicated AF processor, offering 7 FPS at 45.7 megapixels. Another first for a Nikon DSLR is the tilting touchscreen LCD, which offers touch shutter, the ability to focus and shoot just by touching the screen. This is incredibly useful if you're a wedding photographer like me who likes to get low or high with compositions. Moving from the Nikon D750, you'll also appreciate the larger viewfinder, which offers more comfortable and precise shooting. The only small annoyance for me with the Nikon D850, but one that is actually a plus point for many others, is the addition of the XQD memory card format. XQD memory cards are undoubtedly faster, but they're also much more expensive. I'd have preferred 2 SD card slots, but this is just personal taste. Long story short, if you're a wedding photographer who shoots Nikon, the Nikon D850 will be the camera you're either saving up for or have already and are saving up for your second. It's just that good. For the DSLR shooters out there who aren't yet tempted by mirrorless, the Nikon D850 offers the best technology of any DSLR currently on the market and is definitely one of the best cameras for wedding photography in 2021. At number 3, it's Canon 5D Mark IV. After waiting 4 long years for an update to the game-changing Mark III, Canon has turned the tables again with the release of the Canon 5D Mark IV. Whether it's the best camera for wedding photography or not is still up for debate, but one thing's for sure, this impressive DSLR has shaken a lot of feathers in the wedding photography industry. I'm not going to talk about the headline-grabbing dual-pixel feature, which allows you to fine-tune autofocus on a picture after it's been taken, because quite frankly, I consider it useless for wedding photography. However, the other benefits of the updated CMOS sensor are considerable and have caused many a Nikon wedding photographer to consider switching systems entirely. Several high-profile wedding photographers including Sam Hurt have indeed done exactly this. Aside from the vastly improved autofocus when compared to the 5D Mark III, the Canon 5D Mark IV also brings with it improved dynamic range, more megapixels, better high ISO performance, continuous shooting speed, built-in Wi-Fi, a touchscreen and 4K video. It's also lighter than its predecessor. Then there are the features that already existed in the pro-body Canon DSLRs that make other brand owners jealous, such as logical menu structure, overlaid double exposures, and those gorgeous Canon skin tones, all backing up what is already a very attractive camera. The one feature that really sets the Canon 5D Mark IV apart from many wedding photographers though is the speed of autofocus using the touchscreen LCD. Simply by touching the subject's eye on the rear LCD, for example, the camera quickly grabs focus or even allows you to take the shot without pressing the shutter button. As anyone who's ever attempted to control the focus point using buttons during live view can attest, it is a painful experience. The new touch and focus shoot functionality on the Canon 5D Mark IV is reminiscent of much smaller cameras, such as the Olympus OMD EM5 Mark II, and is a huge step in the right direction for photographers who rely heavily on live view to preview exposures before shooting. It's unfortunate that Canon didn't add a tilt screen LCD to the Canon 5D Mark IV functionality that's available with the competing Nikon D750, but arguably not a deal breaker for Nikon shooters to remain faithful to their system. It should be noted however that the Nikon D750, whilst not offering the same advances in technology as the Mark IV, is currently around half the price. Whilst the dynamic range improvements over the Mark III are considerable, the Canon 5D Mark IV hasn't really set any new industry standards with its improved sensor. After a 5 EV push, it's well ahead of the other Canon Pro line DSLRs, but still behind the Nikon D810 and Sony A7R II when comparing extreme highlight shadow recovery. However, what really matters is the huge improvement in ISO noise over its predecessor. Finally, Canon shooters are able to underexpose to protect highlights, then boost shadows in the post to achieve an image with wide dynamic range, a technique employed by Nikon shooters for several years. This said, ISO performance is still not on par with the Nikon D750 and other cameras in this league. Despite the high price, there's no doubt that many Canon wedding photographers will make the investment and upgrade to a couple of Canon 5D Mark IV bodies. The advancements in dynamic range and ISO may not be significant when compared to Nikon Sony offerings, but when combined with the latest technology and some show-stopping features, the Canon 5D Mark IV is still one of the best cameras for wedding photography available this year. At number 4, it's Sony A7R III. I've been shooting weddings for almost 5 years with Nikon DSLRs, but since this review of the Sony A7R III, I'm now on the other side of the mirrorless fence. The Sony Alpha line of cameras is confusing and a little overwhelming. Sony releases update after update, leaving us with a plethora of choices. However, if you're looking for arguably the best mirrorless camera for wedding photography, ignore everything else. The Sony A7R III is it. Wait a minute. Didn't you just say the Sony A7 III was the best? Well yes, I did. Well done for concentrating. Allow me to explain. The Sony A7 III offers the best bang for the buck and even trumps this here Sony A7R III in autofocus and high ISO performance. However, what it lacks in high resolution. Although having those massive 42.4 megapixels files may slow your post-processing workflow, it also proves incredibly useful for lazy wedding photographers like me. Lazy or smart, you decide, but being able to crop into files without losing much detail is a real-time saver for me. I assign one of the custom buttons on my Sony A7R III to a PSC crop, which means that during a wedding, I can switch from my 35mm lens field of view to around 50mm just by pressing a button. During the speeches, I do the same thing with my 85mm lens, converting it instantly into a 130mm-ish lens. Being able to get instant reach on any lens means less time faffing with lens changes and less gear in my camera bag. The additional megapixels are obviously also very useful for more aggressive cropping during editing. The high ISO performance and dynamic range is more than most wedding photographers will ever need, and coming from a Nikon D750, I'm pleased to report that there's very little difference in sensor performance. For you Canon shooters, prepare to have your eyes opened. In-body image 5-axis stabilization allows you to handhold the Sony a7R III at slow shutter speeds and still produce tack-sharp images. It's good to know that ISO climbs up to 102,400 if you do need it. IAF is akin to voodoo magic, with the camera locking onto a subject's eye with eerie precision. This is one of those features that wedding photographers can rely on all day, and something that makes other mirrorless cameras and DSLRs alike function like dinosaurs in comparison. Mirrorless cameras are pushing technology further and faster than the aging DSLR, and nowhere is this more apparent than the high-tech Sony a7R III. 4K movie recording allows you to extract still images in post-production at a quality high enough for client delivery. It's good to get a rounded opinion of the camera before you buy it, so be sure to check out Sony a7R III for wedding photography. Bear in mind that this was after my first wedding with the camera, and since then, I've learned to live with its flaws. One thing's for certain, if you want a camera for wedding photography that offers medium format-like resolution in a compact body, look no further than the Sony a7R III. At number 5, it's Canon 5D Mark III. The Canon 5D Mark III is by far the most popular wedding photography camera of the photographers featured here on ShotKit. Despite the newer Canon 5D Mark IV, many wedding photographers have chosen to stick with this workhorse of a camera and are more than happy to do so. The aging Canon 5D Mark III will always remain a true all-rounder. Great image quality, high resolution, responsive operation, 6 frames per second continuous shooting, excellent build quality, high resolution LCD monitor, excellent 100% viewfinder, full manual video mode, and dual SD and CF card slots. As an added bonus for fans of multiple exposures, Live View features a handy overlay function to help align 2 or more images, which none of the Nikon Camera Pro DSLR lineups currently has. Since it's been a good few years since its release, the Canon 5D Mark III can be picked up for bargain prices right now, and for those just starting out in wedding photography or those wanting a second body, it's a sensible investment. Weaknesses include mixed memory card support, which cripples the write speed of the SD card, and a somewhat aging autofocus system. Whether lightning-fast AF performance is necessary for you as a wedding photographer is up to you to decide, but whatever the case, it's useful to remember that the AF performance on a pro-grade camera of this level is only perceived as good-bad when compared to another. In other words, it's good enough for most. Whether the Canon 5D Mark III is the best camera for wedding photography or not, it is by far and away the most popular, representing a great feature set in a robust, reliable body for Canon shooters.